Hey folks, so I thought I would do a little bit of an update video here on the YouTube channel as I do every so often, usually every few months, but I thought I would do one here right at the end of DreamHack Open Anaheim, which was essentially my first gig of 2020 and the only gig that I knew for sure that I had. But I wanted to sit down and just kind of talk about the event, how I thought it went, what I was going throughout the event, and then just kind of maybe talk a little bit about what I think the future is going to hold or what I'm hoping for, right? That's what we'll go with. So again, going into Anaheim, I wasn't really sure if I was going for a bit because I just didn't have a partner lined up, and it took a while to finally be able to get someone, which wound up being Dan DDK. And this was great because, Dan's obviously someone that is a big name in Counter-Strike. He's one of the top commentators in the game. He's also a very good analyst, even though he doesn't really do much analyst work, but certainly can be, has great YouTube content. And we're kind of similar wavelengths, I guess you could say, because we're both very analytical. We both have to focus a lot on strategy, and we're both kind of color commentators to a degree, though I would say Dan's much more capable at play-by-play, and he's kind of a hybrid. Definitely has his play-by-play moments, and he can definitely execute those very well. But we're very similar in what we like to think about. Though I would say that sometimes I drift some more towards statistics and things on top of the tactics and strategy, whereas he likes to delve a lot more into like the mental game and decision making and mindsets and attitudes and kind of other concepts like that I don't really necessarily explore as much. So the point is there's some similarities between us, but there's also some topics that maybe we focus on that are different from each other. And again, he has that play-by-play background that's much stronger than mine. But anyway, I was excited because he's a guy that I look up to a lot. I think that, he's someone that, I've kind of learned from indirectly by watching his work, and just a guy that I respect because I know that he puts in the work, that he's very studious, and I just respect the analytical mind that he has because it's something that, I strive towards. So I was really excited to work with him. I was a little bit curious on how the dynamic would be though, because since we are both so analytically heavy and how we like to present commentary, I was kind of wondering, like, well, what happens when it comes to, like, hyping things up and doing play-by-play? And it turned out that we kind of just took turns with that, though particularly for the playoff semifinals, I tried to lean a bit more on Dan to cover, like, the big hype play-by-play clutch moments because I feel like he was just much stronger at them than me. I still did do some play-by-play, though, and I felt like I did pretty good with it. I think day two is where it hurt the most because it was such a long day, and so I was just kind of getting mentally fatigued, which I know it sounds silly, but I mean, it's just something where I haven't commentated that much in a while. I certainly haven't commentated a really long day in a while. And it took us 8.5 hours, almost 9 hours to cast two best of threes because each best of three went all three maps. We had one map that went into 4 or 5 overtimes. We had another map that went to a single overtime. Most of the games we commentated were quite close, so even if they didn't go to OT, they still went the distance. And then we also had like a couple of tech pauses where we had to fill. And so it took many hours to get through just two best of threes. And so with that, there was times where I was just jumbling my words, getting a little bit just kind of foggy in some of my, talking processes, just not finding the words the way I usually do, which would cause me to take maybe long pauses mid-sentence, or would cause me just to say the wrong thing or just kind of jumble things together a bit. And part of that's also me having such high talking speed that kind of makes it even worse because you have a higher likelihood of mispronouncing stuff if you're saying it quickly. And then you also don't give yourself that much time in between words to maybe call an audible, so to speak, and come up with a new thought or vary up your diction or just be better with the clarity of your flow, I guess you could say, right? So that was a couple things that knocked me the second day, but I thought I finished strong on the third day. I felt like I was able to focus up. I was able to be a little bit more careful, and just I think I was a little bit more on point, and I felt like I finished strong at the very least. And I thought I had a pretty good day one as well. And I think overall day two, while I did make some mistakes, it was 9 hours of commentary. So even if I made a handful of mistakes across those 9 hours, I felt overall still okay. I thought that it was actually a fun dynamic with Dan. Again, it was definitely like an analytical heavy broadcast, I think, which is kind of much different than maybe what people are used to. In certain cases, it felt like we were just kind of talking about the game together, almost like a podcast, so to speak, but with the game in front of us, which I think is actually nice. It creates some cool conversation. It, allows it to be, just for people out there who like analysis and like talks about strategy and things of that nature. I felt like we really executed that well. And I think overall, I was able to bring the insights I wanted. My strengths are the fact that I'm research heavy, that I show up, I'm prepared. I know these teams. I know their recent results. I know their stats. I know, how they like to play certain maps, what their styles are, what their tactics are, what strategies they like to use, what roles they implement. I'm very quick to pick up on if roles have changed, which I think I was pretty good about pointing out when I was mentioning how Furia had changed some of their roles with Vinny, and how some of these teams were setting up their new roles with Gen G kind of debuting at this event. And also just talking about how these teams were stylistically different, like Forza's chaotic fast-paced play versus more calculated and slower play from a team like Gen G, but they were able to mix things in. And so I felt like I had a really good read about how these teams were approaching the game. I was able to sometimes call plays before they happen and set the viewer up for what they were about to see. And so I felt like I accomplished what I wanted. I was able to bring those insights that my research is based on. But I was also able to loosen up a bit, have fun, and also throw in some stuff here and there. Maybe some of the things I threw in that were a little bit more of a joke. Some of them hit, some of them didn't, as far as making people laugh or whatever. But I was able to have more fun with it and have a good time with Dan. And I think one of the big things that I've been working on since late last year was also just being more confident. I felt in the past I always had this chip on my shoulder where I felt like I had to prove what I was talking about because I knew I didn't have the same credibility as a former professional player. And that's why I'm so research intensive. That way I could kind of maybe not have edges on other people, but at least make sure that I was never going to get caught, not having something to share that was insightful, however you want to take that. And so for a while, I felt like there was always a chip on my shoulder. And look, I've had my knocks on social media and different instances where people have really dogged me out. And so that obviously can kill your confidence sometimes too. But I really wanted to focus on bringing that confidence, and at least, that way I could know that I was doing my best work, because if you come in not confident, then you're going to have more chances of sounding shaky or not presenting information as well, or whatever the case may be, right? And, I try to have more fun with it too, try to loosen up a bit, because I can't just be a guy regurgitating stats and facts all the time. I have to be able to also be entertaining and have fun with the broadcast, which is a bit harder to do when you're with a partner you never worked with before. The chemistry's not going to be there as much. You're not necessarily going to know as much about what the person's going to respond to or how they're going to bring things in. So it's a little bit harder. Something I feel like Vince and I were actually doing really well with in Rotterdam was the entertainment part, like being able to crack jokes and just have fun with it. And I think if Vince and I ever get to work together in the future and keep building on that, I think I could even get more and more developed in that way, because there needs to be a balance, right? There needs to be a balance between bringing insight and being analytical and being that color commentator, but also making sure that you're also having fun and being entertaining. And I think that's still something I need to work on, but something I think I'm getting better at. But not having a consistent partner can kind of slow down that progress. And I think there's also still some things I need to work on delivery wise, talking speed being one of them. I don't think people realize how hard of a habit that is for me to break. I'm just so used to talking fast because I just think fast, and I just also know that I have limited time to get information out there. And so when I really want to share something insightful and I need to fit it into a tight space, so to speak, as far as like the timeline of the broadcast, then I tend to just talk as fast as I can to get the information out. That way I can share as much insight as possible. But that obviously I need to balance better with, maybe not necessarily having to share everything, but focusing on the most important things and making sure that I don't sacrifice the clarity of my delivery just by trying to jam in as much shit as I can, right? And it's also about finding a balance between focusing on the match at hand and what's happening in the game, and then sharing all this like kind of supplemental information that I have when it comes to stats and what tactics this team likes to use, what I've seen them do in the past. It's good to bring that stuff in. I think it's really good to bring that stuff in to kind of share with the viewers what's changed or how have they developed over time. I think it adds storylines and adds value, but I also can't be missing things that are happening in the game while I'm trying to share that information, because then it messes things up. And also, if I'm focusing so much on bringing notes that I have, then maybe I'm like reading the notes and I'm trying to bring into this next portion of the broadcast, and then I'm maybe missing something my co-commentator said that I need to be connecting to better, which can ruin the flow of the cast. So it's about finding that balance of bringing in supplemental information, bringing in insights, being entertaining, making sure my delivery is on point, and meshing with my co-caster well. There's a lot of factors involved at once. And I think that I'm getting better in almost all these areas, but I think talking speed is still a big problem for me. And again, it's something I've been doing for so long that even if I try to focus on it really hard and I make sure that I do slow down, because if I'm conscious about it, I will start to slow down. But eventually you start thinking about other things like the game itself, and you just fall back on those habits. And it's just so hard. Like, I know it shouldn't be. I know people are probably sitting there just like, dude, just slow down. I know, trust me. And I feel like I consciously can, but I really have to focus on it. And the moment that I lose focus on it to focus on something else, all of a sudden I slip back into an old way and start talking fast again. And so that's just something that I need to get better at. I think I am definitely better at it before. I think overall I use my voice better. If you go watch some shit I did from like 2014, my voice sounds way worse than it is now. So I think I've made strides, but there's still some things I need to focus on. But I think I'm on the right path. It's just about getting those reps in, staying consistent, watching back film, picking out things to focus on for the future, and just maintaining my strengths. I don't ever want to lose the core of who I am as a commentator when it comes to the analytical stuff I try to share. But it's about, adding on things, fine-tuning things, clearing up things in my delivery that I know need to be cleared up, and all that good stuff, right? Now, with that in mind, there was that thread that came out on Reddit, which I probably shouldn't be addressing, but I guess I will, just because it did hit me. Like, normally I have pretty thick skin about stuff, but I kind of let this one slip by because the title wasn't inherently negative. Like, it just said an observation about dust casting at this event or something like that. I'm like, oh, well, I mean, that's not like he's saying that I'm dog shit or something in the title, so maybe this is something cool. And then it turned to be someone basically saying that I was making mistakes on how I said certain things like every few minutes, and there's a few other things in there. And it's one of those things where some of the things that were being said were true. There were some moments where I did jump on my words, but it was heavily exaggerated how often it happened. Like, to say that I was doing it every few minutes is pretty ridiculous. It definitely didn't happen. But there certainly were a couple of moments in certain maps where, I was a bit foggy and just not, maybe I wouldn't say focused. I was focused, but just sometimes you have like those brain farts, or just kind of those moments where something happens and so you mispronounce something, or you read the score slightly wrong, or you think you read the money a certain way, but really you're off. And I don't know, just things happen, right? And so, yeah, I definitely admit that I had made some mistakes and I had jumbled my words a few times, but to kind of exaggerate to say that I do it all the time was a bit rough. Like, look, if you don't like me as a commentator because you don't like my voice or my delivery or my looks or my style, whatever the case may be, that's like totally fair. I can totally understand that. Again, I've admitted some of the issues that I do have that I need to work on. But there are some people who just kind of take it overboard and kind of just blow it way out of proportion on how bad certain things are, how often they happen. And I think it's kind of unfair to pile on someone for a few mistakes they made across 9 hours of broadcasting, where, there's so much happening. There's so many rounds being played. There's tech pauses. There's filling moments you have to do. There's things going on that you sometimes don't even know about when it comes to, like, an issue taking place with like a mic, or, just there's just so many factors that can be involved that people don't even know about, that can sometimes cause things to happen. But, it is what it is. I responded to the thread. I probably shouldn't have. And it seemed like there was a lot of support that came in after the fact. I saw a lot of support on Twitter and things of that nature as well. But yeah, it's just one of the things that did kind of get me a bit, and I probably shouldn't let it happen. I mean, someone made a really good point in thread that I should ignore these things and like rely on my peers, and I do. Like, I want to give a shout out to Launders. Launders actually was a guy that I talked to kind of privately throughout the event, who was kind of giving me tabs on things that he noticed that I needed to kind of adjust a bit. And so definitely I do rely on my peers. And I was also talking to Dan after every single map, trying to figure out if we needed to tweak anything, if he felt things were going okay, if there was something he wanted to change. There were a couple of times we did make a couple of changes. So certainly I am relying on my peers in production, but sometimes you can find good constructive criticism out there on social media from the crowd as well. Those are indeed the people you are broadcasting to at the end of the day, and people you're trying to entertain at the end of the day. And so their opinions can hold value. You have to kind of use a filter and kind of a fine-tooth comb to find the things that are actually helpful. But, I probably shouldn't have engaged with it as much as I did. I probably shouldn't let it get to me as much as I did. But it is what it is. And again, after that thread, I felt like I really focused up and finished strong on the semifinals day. And I felt like a lot of people did, at the end of the day, like the commentary, like, what me and Dan were able to do together. It was a lot of fun. But it's definitely, a tough one for me, going forward, actually. I guess we'll transition into that topic to kind of finish off this video, where I'm not really sure what's next. I'm not involved in Flashpoint. I'm not in EPL. I'm not involved with Blast. And that's pretty much the bulk of the calendar are kind of those things, besides like the minors for the Rio Major and maybe some other small stuff here and there. So I don't really know what's next, because as far as analyst work goes, it just seems like that's kind of in the past for me. Like it's so hard for me to find analyst desk work now because we just have more and more pros or former pros kind of coming into the analyst pool and have that added credibility, that added brand size, that added reputation. And while there are some things that I think I'm really well researched on that I can present that maybe they don't have, they also have a ton of stuff that I don't have. Like they have the mental game stuff. They have the mentality things. They've actually been in the server. They've played the game. There's going to be strategical and tactical stuff that they understand that I don't understand as much. They have so much value. And so it makes it a little bit more difficult to find analyst desk work because, again, there's a lot of talented analysts and there's limited slots. Like most events have like 2 analysts, maybe 3 analysts. And so when you have a pool of like 10 or more analysts and there's only 2 or 3 slots for each event and you have some super well-established analysts, in particular kind of in the tier 1 level, yeah, it becomes really difficult to fit a way in. Certainly I would never turn down analyst desk work. If opportunities were there, I would certainly take them. It's just not there right now. And when it comes to commentating, that's tough too because you have like 5 pretty well-established duos right now, it seems, who all do fantastic work. And then you also have a couple of other kind of solo artists out there who also come in and do really good work. And Vince and I were trying to duo, and I think we still would like to, but the opportunities just aren't there, Like, we've just never been able to get that consistent runway to work a bunch of stuff together kind of in a row and build up things, which is kind of, for multiple reasons, would be really important. For one, it helps us develop a better product. Our chemistry and our flow and our technical abilities and all those things are obviously going to be much better and much more sharpened if we're getting to work together consistently. Not only that, but if we get to work together consistently, we're also establishing ourselves. We're establishing the brand. We're establishing ourselves in the eyes of the community. We're, building up that rep, building up that brand, right? And so we're missing out on all those things because we barely ever get to work together. We worked 2 LANs together last year and then 2 things remotely. So 4 events total in the entirety of 2019. And then before that, it was basically 2 years we didn't do anything together at all. So we've never been able to get that consistent runway to like really establish ourselves, and not only establish ourselves, but also, be able to work on our chemistry and improve our product. I think that we showed that we have a lot of potential based on what we did, particularly at Rotterdam, but also even some of the remote commentary stuff that we had done for some of the Masters events. I think that he's a great play-by-play. I think he's only getting better and better. I think he's getting more confident. He's getting healthier. His mentality is getting more positive. So I think that he's on a great trajectory right now individually. And I think that I am too. I think that I'm keeping my strengths as an analyst. I'm getting better at my delivery. I'm starting to be able to be more confident. I'm starting to be able to loosen up and have a bit more fun. I think we actually had some good banter and some good back and forth at Rotterdam where we proved that we aren't just like a play-by-play color rigid structure, but we could also have a bit of fun. And I think that we could continue to develop that if we got more opportunities together. But unfortunately, this doesn't seem like that's going to happen. Like, there's just not really many opportunities out there for us, and I'm not sure if that'll change or not. We'll just have to see, but certainly I'm up for it, and I think he's still up for it too. You have certainly seen him working with other people, and it's one of those things where we can't force the duo, and we can't turn down work with other people because that's just kind of dumb financially. It also makes it to where you're like out of sight, out of mind with the community if you don't work for a long time, and so you can't like sacrifice opportunities just to try to enforce a duo. You have to kind of get someone on board with it. It just hasn't really happened yet. I don't know if it will. And the other thing is like if it's not going to be Vince and I as a duo, I don't really see another duo that makes sense for me right now in the current climate. I'll certainly work with anyone. I think I am flexible in that way, but it does certainly hurt me actually building a consistent product, building that chemistry with someone else, and all those things that kind of come with that. So it's tough, man. Like I mean, I don't want to get like emotional here, but I try to be as optimistic as I possibly can be. I try to stay positive. I try to not have that loser's mentality because it doesn't really get you anywhere to do that. But at the same time, you have to kind of be realistic. And I look at the calendar and I look at, the fact that all these events basically have talent booked, and you kind of realize that, man, like, I don't know where the opportunities are going to come from or if they're going to come. Sometimes things pop up last minute. Sometimes offers get made a week before an event, and so there always are those chances that you might get picked up, but there's something that I know of for sure. And so I don't know what's going to happen, right? At some point I either have to, find part-time work so I can at least have a paycheck when I'm home, which I am doing. I have that lined up already. So I'm not going to be like homeless or anything like that. I have, a job that I'm going to be having here pretty soon. That's going to be like kind of part-time, but also flexible to allow me to pursue opportunities, in esports still. So there's that, or maybe I just have to accept that I'm not good enough, I mean, I always want that to be kind of the last thing, right? I want to make sure that I control all other factors first before I accept that. Because if I accept that, then yeah, it is over. Like, there's nothing I can do about it if I'm not good enough. But if that's not the case, then even if I'm not good enough, I can still always improve and get better and become good enough, right? So it's one of those things where there's other things I can pursue too, whether it be like networking or whether it be, just other things that I can do to get more confident, get better at my job, connect better with people, whatever the case may be. I don't think I have any bad blood with anybody. I think I get along with pretty much everyone. I'm try to be nice. I try to help people out where I can. All those different things. But yeah, it's hard to know where things are going to go. Maybe it's never going to happen for me in contract. Maybe it's going to have to be another game. I don't really know. Like there's so many question marks and mysteries that is just kind of the life of a freelancer in many ways, but particularly in broadcast talent where it's so competitive and there's so many good people and there's just limited spots available for gigs. And, there's no reason to knock off someone who's established to give someone like me a chance when there's just no reason to do that really, right? It's just like, I feel like right now it's still unfinished business for me, which makes it really hard to just like walk away from this. There's still goals I want to accomplish. I still want to get to a tier 1 event. Like I just wanted to work a tier 1 event all the way through, be there in person. I've done some remotely. I was a small part of E-League Season 1. So I've had some ties to big events, but I've never worked one all the way through. And I really want that. I want that one thing for sure. It's a goal that I still feel like I need to hit, like, before I walk away from this. I don't want to walk away with this anytime soon, but at the end of the day, I am, about to turn 30 at the end of 2020, and there are financial responsibilities I have to think about, and, eventually I do need to kind of get a career going, and being a freelancer is a little bit tough because that stability is not there unless you're, like, at the top of the game. But, yeah, we'll just have to see. Like, I'm not giving up. I'm not quitting. Again, I'm making sure that I at least have something part-time, while I'm home that's flexible so that I can earn a living while I'm home and be able to pay bills, but not necessarily make it to where I'm not flexible enough to take gigs when they arise. So that's kind of where I'm at. Again, I think that if Vince and I were given the runway, we could be a really good duo. I think individually I could still do great things as an analyst or a caster elsewhere also. It's just I need the opportunities, I need the reps, I need the consistency to build myself up. There's only so much I can do to improve myself by sitting at home and doing research or casting demos or, listening back to VODs. There's only so much I can do with that. I just need that runway, and this is my passion. This is what I want to do, so we'll have to see what happens, I guess. But I'll leave it at that. So thanks so much for tuning in. Catch you next time.